Ryan was 59 years old, and mornings like this were nothing new to him. He had been walking these woods for decades, long before retirement slowed most men his age. The forest was familiar in a way that required no effort. He knew where the ground dipped, where the soil stayed soft after rain, and where the light first broke through the trees. It was early. The air was cool, steady, and clean. No wind strong enough to move the branches, only the occasional rustle of leaves settling. Birds called at a distance, spaced out, unhurried. Ryan moved at a measured pace, not searching for anything, not expecting anything. This was routine. A habit formed over years. He paid attention without trying to. Tracks, broken twigs, the sound of his boots against packed earth. Nothing stood out. Nothing felt wrong. The forest felt the way it always did, quiet, balanced, unchanged. Ryan was not the kind of man who imagined danger or mystery where there was none. He trusted what he could see and hear. Experience had taught him that most things had simple explanations. Animals passed through. Weather shifted. Life went on. That morning felt ordinary in every sense. The woods showed no sign of disturbance. No urgency. No warning. Ryan expected to finish his walk the same way he always did, calm, uneventful. Forgotten by midday. He had no reason to believe that within minutes, that familiar silence would change. Or that this routine morning would stay with him for the rest of his life. Ryan had gone only a short distance farther when he heard it. At first, it was so faint he wasn't sure it was real. A thin, strained sound, barely rising above the natural quiet of the woods. He stopped walking and listened. The sound came again, short, uneven, not loud enough to carry far, but clear enough now that he knew he hadn't imagined it. Ryan stayed still. He didn't reach for anything or call out. He simply listened, the way years of experience had taught him to do. The cry didn't fit the patterns he knew. It wasn't a bird. It didn't carry the sharpness of a fox or the steady rhythm of a wounded deer. There was something irregular about it, something tired. He waited. The forest held its breath. Then the sound came a third time, weaker than before. Ryan felt concern settle in, slow and steady. Not fear, not panic. Just the awareness that something was wrong. Animals in trouble made noise for a reason. Whatever this was, it wasn't moving away. It was staying in the same place. He adjusted his stance and turned slightly, trying to judge direction. The sound came from deeper in the trees, off the main path he usually followed. Ryan hesitated only a moment. He knew better than to rush, and better than to ignore something that didn't belong. Carefully, he stepped off the trail. Each movement was deliberate. He watched where he placed his feet, avoided snapping branches, and stopped often to listen again. The sound guided him, faint but persistent. As he moved closer, the cry didn't grow louder. If anything, it seemed to fade. That was what concerned him most. Whatever was making that sound was running out of strength, and Ryan understood that time might already be working against it. Ryan slowed as the trees thinned slightly ahead of him. He took one more careful step, then stopped. What he saw didn't register all at once. His mind tried to place it into something familiar, something reasonable, and failed. Near the base of a fallen log was a small figure, crouched low to the ground. It was not large, not fully upright. Its proportions were wrong for any animal Ryan knew. Covered in dark matted fur, it trembled as it clutched at itself, rocking slightly. Ryan did not move. Years of instinct kept him still. He watched quietly, breathing slow, hands open, at his sides. The figure lifted its head just enough for him to see its face. The eyes were wide, glassy, and unfocused. Young, far too young. There was no strength in its posture. No threat in the way it held itself. Whatever this was, it was frightened and weak. Ryan could see that immediately. The sound he had followed came again, a thin cry pulled from deep in the chest. More reflex than intent. Only then did the full weight of what he was seeing settle in. This was not a person. Not a bear cub. Not anything he could explain away. The shape of the hands, the set of the shoulders, the face beneath the fur, it all pointed to the same impossible conclusion. Ryan felt disbelief rise, then fall away just as quickly. There was no time for it. The child, because that was the only word that fit, was in distress. Ryan scanned the area. No movement in the trees. No heavy footsteps. No sign of anything larger nearby. The baby was alone. That realization shifted something in him. The shock gave way to concern, steady and heavy. Whatever this creature was, it was young, suffering, and without protection. Ryan stayed where he was, silent and visible, knowing that sudden movement would only add to its fear. Ryan noticed the movement almost by accident. At first he thought the air itself was shifting, a faint shimmer just above the ground. Then he saw them, bees, dozens at first, then more, circling low and tight around the small body near the log. They weren't passing through. They weren't drifting. They were focused. Ryan followed their pattern back to a dark hollow in the fallen tree. A disturbed hive. Broken wood. The reason was suddenly clear. The baby had wandered too close, maybe brushed the wrong place, and triggered something it couldn't escape. The swarm moved with purpose. Bees struck and pulled away, again and again, not wild but relentless. Ryan could hear the faint buzzing now, layered over the weak cries coming from the child. The sound was steady, almost mechanical, and it made his stomach tighten. The baby Bigfoot tried to shield itself, arms pulled in, head tucked down, but it was too slow. Too small. Swelling was already visible along its face and neck. One eye was nearly closed. The cries had lost their sharpness, turning hoarse and uneven. Ryan knew bees. He'd been stung enough times in his life to understand what was happening. One sting was manageable. Dozens were dangerous. Hundreds could be fatal, especially for something young. The baby's movements slowed. Each attempt to shift position took more effort than the last. The cries came farther apart, separated by long, strained breaths. Ryan could see the body sagging, strength draining away. There was no time to wait. No time to observe from a distance. If the swarm continued much longer, the outcome was obvious. Shock, collapse, silence. Ryan's mind moved quickly, cutting through disbelief and hesitation. The situation was clear. This wasn't a mystery anymore. It was a matter of minutes. He understood with absolute certainty that if nothing changed soon, the small figure in front of him would not survive, and that understanding settled heavily on him. Steady and unavoidable, Ryan knew he had to act carefully. One wrong movement, and the swarm would attack him too, or worse, panic the baby further. He took a slow step back, keeping his hands low and visible. He scanned the forest floor for anything he could use without startling the bees, a fallen branch, a patch of dry leaves, anything that could create smoke or a subtle breeze. Finding a small pile of dry moss and leaves, he picked it up quietly. With gentle, controlled movements, he rubbed it against the broken log, sending thin wisps of smoke upward. The bees reacted immediately, their buzzing rising in pitch, then slowly began to scatter. Drawn away from the child, but not alarmed enough to attack him, Ryan didn't rush. Every step was deliberate. He backed farther, waving his arms just slightly to guide the swarm toward the hollow. Each motion measured, non-threatening, aware that the baby's survival depended on patience and precision. The forest seemed to hold its breath around him. The only sound now the faint hum of the retreating insects and the baby's weak cries. After several minutes, the bees had largely dispersed, leaving only a few lingering in the air. Ryan's heart eased slightly. He approached cautiously, keeping his distance but ready to intervene again if necessary. The baby Bigfoot could no longer hold itself upright. Its tiny body sagged, exhaustion weighing it down completely. It collapsed onto the soft ground, shivering lightly, too drained to cry further. Ryan knelt a few feet away, silent, observing, breathing slow. For the first time in what felt like hours, the forest was quiet again. The early morning sounds of birds and wind returned softly, but the moment remained heavy. Ryan could see the fragility of life laid bare in front of him. He knew this was just the beginning. The real challenge, keeping the baby alive and safe, was still ahead. Ryan remained on his knees, a careful distance away, unwilling to crowd the tiny creature. The baby Bigfoot lay on the forest floor, its dark fur matted and damp, chest rising and falling in uneven, shallow breaths. Each inhale seemed a struggle, each exhale weaker than the last. He could see the swelling on its face, and limbs had worsened since he first arrived. The small arms barely twitched. The legs, tucked under its body, shook occasionally, but the movements were weak, lacking the energy of a healthy child. Ryan's eyes traced the subtle rise of its chest, counting each shallow breath. He knew that every second counted. Time seemed to stretch. The forest, moments ago calm again, now felt suspended. Ryan's own breathing slowed instinctively, matching the rhythm of the baby's. Fear had not taken him before, but now a quiet dread pressed against the edges of his mind. Could he really be too late? He shifted slightly, careful not to make a sound. His hands hovered over the ground, ready to intervene if the baby moved or fell further, but not daring to touch. Every instinct told him to help, but the presence of adult Bigfoots nearby, unseen but possible, demanded caution. The weak cries had nearly disappeared. Only a faint whimper escaped the baby occasionally, each one more strained than the last. Ryan's heart tightened. The forest held its breath with him. No dramatic gestures, no shouting, no rushing, only the weight of helpless observation. The tension of a life hanging by the thinnest of threads. In that quiet, Ryan felt the true fragility of the moment. The baby's struggle, though small and silent, was monumental. And in the stillness, he understood that the next choice, the next action, could change everything or nothing at all. Ryan's focus was entirely on the baby, counting the shallow breaths when a subtle change in the forest caught his attention. The air itself seemed heavier, charged, and a faint rustling came from the thicker stand of trees just beyond the clearing. Something was moving, and it was deliberate. He froze, every muscle tense but controlled. His eyes scanned the shadows, adjusting to the dim morning light filtering through the branches. Slowly, large shapes began to emerge. At first, only glimpses, dark silhouettes shifting between the trunks, but soon enough, their full forms became clear. Adult Bigfoots. They did not approach immediately. They paused at the edges of the clearing, crouched low, observing. Ryan could feel their awareness, almost like a weight in the air. Each figure was massive, taller than any man, broad-shouldered, covered in thick, dark fur. Yet there was no aggression in their posture. No growls, no sudden movement. Only careful, measured alertness. Ryan stayed kneeling, every action deliberate. He did not breathe loudly, did not make any sudden gestures. His years in the woods had taught him the value of patience and restraint. The creatures seemed to sense it. They watched, studied, yet did not move closer. And then he saw her. The mother. She was unmistakable. Her presence carried authority, the subtle tension of someone protecting what was hers. Every other adult fell slightly back in deference, but her focus was fixed entirely on the small figure on the forest floor. The baby Bigfoot stirred weakly, and her gaze followed immediately, eyes softening with recognition. Ryan felt a mix of awe and apprehension, tempered by relief. There would be no attack, no sudden rush. These beings were intelligent, cautious, protective, and above all, parental. In that silent exchange, Ryan understood the unspoken rules. He had been allowed to intervene, But now the true guardians had arrived. The responsibility, for a moment, shifted away from him entirely. The mother moved with deliberate care, each step slow, measured, and controlled. She didn't rush. Every motion was purposeful but gentle, as if the ground itself demanded respect. Her eyes remained fixed on the small form lying on the forest floor. Ryan watched from his kneeling position, heart steadying but tense. When she reached the baby, she knelt slightly, lowering herself without disturbing the fragile creature. Her massive hands, dark and calloused with strength, hovered for a moment before she lifted the child. The touch was careful, almost reverent, cradling the baby as one would hold a delicate bundle of warmth. The small body trembled under her hands, but not in fear, more from exhaustion and relief. The baby's eyes flickered open faintly, barely focused, but recognition sparked immediately. A weak, trembling whimper passed between them. Ryan felt it in his chest, a quiet, unspoken bond. A pulse of relief that traveled from the child to the mother and back again, even as she held her baby. The mother's gaze shifted briefly, and Ryan knew he had been noticed. Their eyes met human and Bigfoot, and the moment stretched, long and silent, filled with understanding rather than hostility. He did not move. He did not speak. There was no need. The forest seemed to contract around them, time slowing to hold the weight of that quiet exchange. Ryan felt a profound respect settle over him. There was intelligence here, a deep, careful awareness, and above all, the instinct to protect. The mother was protective, but not aggressive toward him. Her focus remained primarily on the baby, yet her acknowledgement of his presence was unmistakable, a silent agreement that he had helped, that he had interfered for the right reason. For several heartbeats, the three of them, the human, the mother, and the child, held still. No words were needed. No gestures beyond the gentle hold. Understanding passed between them, unspoken, undeniable, and quietly transformative. In that suspended moment, Ryan realized that what he had witnessed was far beyond chance. It was a glimpse of trust, raw and fleeting, that few humans would ever experience. The mother Bigfoot held her baby close, eyes sweeping the small clearing, and for a moment, she looked directly at Ryan. There was no growl, no sign of aggression, no sudden movement. Only awareness, measured and calm. Then, ever so slowly, she extended one massive hand, fingertips hovering in the air, just short of Ryan. It was a gesture subtle yet unmistakable, a quiet acknowledgement. Not a threat, not a challenge, but recognition. Ryan understood immediately. She was aware of his presence, aware of what he had done. And in that silent, deliberate motion, she communicated something beyond words. Ryan stayed motionless, knees pressed lightly into the forest floor, hands relaxed, head slightly bowed. He did not move. He did not breathe loudly. Every instinct in him urged caution, but the moment demanded stillness, respect, and observation. The air between them felt charged but calm. The forest seemed to pause, holding its breath. Ryan could feel the weight of what had just happened, the fragility of life. Instinctive bond between mother and child, and the rare grace shown to a human who had acted with care. When the mother finally settled, holding her baby securely, her gesture complete, Ryan felt something shift inside him. It was awe, reverence, gratitude, a profound reminder of the fragility and beauty of life, and the trust that can exist between species, unspoken yet absolute. For Ryan, nothing would ever be the same. That moment, brief and quiet, had changed him forever. It was a memory etched deep, one he would carry silently, shaping how he saw the world and its unseen guardians from that day forward. The mother Bigfoot, holding her child securely, turned back toward the tree line. One by one, the other adults followed, moving slowly and deliberately, each step careful, measured. There were no gestures of threat, No sounds of warning, only the quiet rhythm of a family reclaiming the forest. Ryan remained kneeling, watching intently as the figures disappeared between the trunks and shadows. Slowly, the clearing emptied, and the forest returned to its usual calm. The wind rustled softly through the leaves, birds resumed their calls, and the ground felt still beneath him. Only silence remained, heavy and absolute, carrying the weight of what had just occurred. Ryan stayed kneeling for several moments after the Bigfoots had vanished, letting the forest's quiet settle around him. When he finally stood, he began to take in the small details left behind, subtle traces that spoke only to someone paying close attention. A few broken twigs along the edge of the clearing, pressed into the soft earth. Slight depressions where massive feet had stepped carefully. Scattered leaves disturbed in a pattern that seemed deliberate, almost as if the forest itself had remembered the passage of these creatures. There was nothing dramatic, nothing anyone else could see and understand. No tracks that could be photographed, no proof that would survive the day. Ryan crouched low, studying the marks, feeling the quiet weight of what he had witnessed. Each subtle trace carried meaning only for him. He understood, with a clarity that went beyond words, that this encounter had not been meant for anyone else. It was not a story to tell for fame or attention. It was private, sacred, a fleeting intersection of two very different worlds. He straightened slowly, brushing the leaves from his jacket, and glanced back at the spot where the baby had rested. The memory of the mother's gesture, the gentle strength of the family, and the frailty of the child lingered in his mind. These were the remnants of a moment that had changed him, though no one else would ever know. The forest had returned to its routine, but Ryan carried the evidence quietly. Etched into memory rather than captured in any photograph or note. It was a reminder, he thought, that some truths exist only in the heart of the witness. Ryan walked slowly back along the forest path. Each step measured, his mind heavy but calm. He thought about the mother Bigfoot, the small child, and the silent understanding they had shared. It was compassion in its purest form, instinctive and unwavering, a reminder that family exists beyond human boundaries. For the first time, he didn't see the creatures as monsters or legends. He saw parents protective, loving, and aware, navigating a world that demanded care and caution. The realization settled over him, quiet and profound, leaving a warmth in his chest. He knew he could never speak of what had happened. No one would understand, and some things, he realized, were never meant to be shared. This encounter was his alone, a private truth. As the forest returned to its natural rhythm around him, Ryan felt a deep, soothing calm. He carried the memory silently, a lesson in trust, compassion, and the quiet strength of those who protect their own.